Free energy is possible for any of us and all of us to power all of our machinery, provided we do not fall into the trap of believing that free energy can come from a machine that we cannot define definitively how it gets its free energy. So long as we can define that, it is not a perpetual motion machine. It is merely a machine. Take the drinking bird example, the drinking bird toy, over at the YouTube channel of Physics Girl, or Physics Woman, as she prefers to be called, in her URL, but in her title she's Physics Girl, and she explains the mechanics of how the drinking bird toy works, and thus it is not a perpetual motion machine, but it is free energy, because it's using energy from the ambient temperature of the surrounding environment, the air in the room in which the drinking bird toy exists. And that free energy allows it to dunk its little beak continuously, endlessly, so long as the water is in the cup and the drinking bird is positioned so that it can tip over and dunk its little nose, its beak, in the water. Because the water will evaporate and drop the temperature on that beak. So it's not so much the ambient temperature in the room that makes it work, but the fact that the bird is allowed to wet its beak and thus drop the temperature of its beak with respect to the ambient temperature of the room. In any case, it's free energy. That bird will keep tipping over and bobbing back up and tipping over and bobbing back up endlessly, perpetually. But it's not a perpetual motion machine because she can explain it with simple physics and the chemistry involved as well, but mostly physics, the thermodynamics I should say, and physics. So this is how we can have free energy, by simply having a machine that can be explained. That means it cannot be invented, because inventors are notorious for following the dictates of their patent attorney and keeping a few secrets, so that nobody fully understands how the machine works. Take Stanley Meyer, for instance. Nobody fully knows that ammonia is involved, or high voltage positive ionization of air intake, to fully realize the synthetic manufacture of ammonia on demand as you drive the car, from the hydrogen and the nitrogen in the air. Nobody knows that Petros Zographos, or Zographos, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, of Greece, runs his motorcycle off of water, because he bubbles the air through the electrolytic chamber, and thus fulfills Sir Humphrey Davy's quote from 1807 that electrolytic hydrogen will form in the presence of water, while normal hydrogen will not. Does that sound right? Well, however the quote goes, I'm going to have to relook it up again. But you see the point. Free energy is possible whether we want a motorcycle or a car to run off of ammonia and hydrogen, derived from water and air, or whether we want a Barbosa and Lille device to be upended, disconnected from the Earth, and be free of the Earth, and still operate, just like Tesla's special generator could operate, generating its own voltage potential to add to the current, the amperage, and run other appliances, and be free energy, but not a perpetual motion machine, because we can explain it. We can explain how they all operate. Of course, Barbosa and Lille, that's easy. It's oscillations in a circuit fed by voltage difference between two sources of voltage differentiation. It could be magnetomotive force, creating a voltage difference between two masses of iron, or a mass of iron and a smaller mass that's not iron, such as aluminum, with a dielectric between them. Normally it's soil. Or it could be grounding rods put in the earth. If there's a strong enough geomagnetic force in the area, and the soil is dry. So it's not that hard to explain these things in simple terms, provided we're willing to do so. So a perpetual motion machine is a machine in need of definition. It has not yet been defined in terms that we already understand, and so it remains a perpetual motion machine for that reason. But it's still a free energy device if you can run it, and it's a self-runner. You may not be able to self-initiate it. Many of these devices cannot be self-initiated, and you may have to, they may not be auto-adaptable, you know. They may have a stalling speed, so to speak. You know, you may have to operate it at a certain minimum RPM or energy usage in order for them to operate at all, because they may stall on you if they drop below that minimum demand made upon them. Lee Rogers' air compression system that he made on demand while he used the compressed air to drive the pistons in his internal combustion engine rather than using gasoline, it stalled below 20 miles an hour. Yet he was able to compress the air, probably by using a Stirling cycle heat transfer mechanism, to liquefy the air. And then through rapid flash distillation, it would undergo compression forces the minute it transformed itself from a liquid state to an air state inside the piston of his engine. That's why his engine had a layer of ice on it, because he had liquefied air using a very efficient method, the Stirling cycle engine or Stirling cycle heat pump method. So he could convert his car to not run on gasoline and create compressed air or liquid air as he went along. Actually, Nikola Tesla came up with a method for liquefying air. I wonder if it's Stirling who got the credit. So that could be very interesting to find out. Mr. Lind created that patent, of course, in Germany after it was stolen from Tesla in 1895 during his laboratory fire. So you see how free energy can easily be created using simple physics principles. You know, like creating hydrogen from splitting water without using any amperage, and thus not using any watts, just voltage, high frequency, pulsed DC voltage, very high frequency in the megahertz range, and a high enough voltage, and you can split water without using any power to do it. This is the art of leverage, something Archimedes has made famous. The give me a lever and I will move the world. That's free energy. Try to move it with your shoulder. That's not free. But if you use a lever, you can move large objects. That's free energy. Energy you did not have to use. It took patience, though, because then you'll have to swing the long arm of the lever, or the long arm over a longer span, because you've lengthened it to give you leverage. So that's the payoff, though. That's the cost, is the increased radius of swing that you have to tip that lever in order to move a heavy weight. But you'll be able to use your minimum amount of force, your tiny little arm, to move that lever in order to move that heavy rock that you couldn't have moved otherwise. That's free energy. And that's a perpetual motion machine, because you will never tire from that. It'll never break you. So long as your lever doesn't break, it'll never break you, and your fulcrum is steady. It'll never break you. You could move boulders from off a field, a farmer's field, all day long, and it'll never break you. That's perpetual motion, because it's perpetual technique. It's technique. Perpetual technique. The technique works because we know it does, because it's scientific. So it's a misnomer to call something perpetual motion. It's perpetual technique. And this is how these free energy over unity devices work, because of perpetual technique. Got the mantra straight? It's not perpetual motion. That's a disambiguation use of the English language to call something other than what it is. It's perpetual technique. It is not perpetual motion, because once in a while you'll want to sit in the shade and take a break and drink some lemonade and not move boulders all day long, or make love to your honey. One way or another, it's not going to be perpetual, obviously, so it's erroneous to even call it perpetual, unless we take out the word motion and substitute the word technique. It is perpetual technique, because that technique is always available for us to use, whether or not we choose to use it. And then harness free energy whenever we want to. Energy we don't have to pay for. Got it? Get it? Good.